Hey fam, this is Jackie here. I wanted to pop in and share with you a little bit about homeschooling. I have received several messages and people are inquiring like, how do you homeschool? How are you a entrepreneur? This homeschooling thing is coming up. Obviously, there's tons of things going on in the world with a lot of uncertainty, and a lot of people are choosing to homeschool. Now, for me, homeschooling is not a new choice for my family. My oldest child is 19, sophomore in college, and when she was in, I want to say second grade, we took her out of the charter school that she was in. There was a lot of bullying taking place. There wasn't a lot of accountability in the school, and where we were living in the city, there just weren't many options with how life was. We couldn't afford to put her into private school at that moment, and so I began looking into homeschooling options. So I want to share a little bit about my journey with homeschooling just so that you can get an understanding of all the different ways that it can be done and figuring out a way that is actually best for your family. So for me, that was 2000 and I don't know, 10. And back then there just weren't as many creative options as there were, and so I began looking into curriculum that I felt was on a private school level but that would give us the flexibility. So just a little bit about my background. Most of you know me here on the channel as a birth worker. I also am an artist. I have been a healer, artist, traveling mama for quite some time, definitely for the majority of my children's life, and have been more focused full-time on birth work in the last 10 years or so. And so back then it was super important for me to have a flexible schedule in home because I was seeing clients in home, and it was also important for us to have something that we could travel with because if I had shows or if my daughter was traveling out of town, I needed for her to have a curriculum that was easy to transfer. So back then, my choice was Calvert School. I did not choose the hybrid option where she had a teacher from their organization. I was her teacher and I taught her all the information that they gave us. Now, the curriculum was very thorough in terms of what it covered and the books and the supplies that it gave. However, it was not diverse at all. It was your traditional whitewashed curriculum. The reading materials are pretty much the same. I had to do a lot of supplementation when it came to reading and cultural exposure. Now, in our family, that was not a big deal because she was immersed in many different cultural activities just based off of our family being very artistic and community based. So I had her in other programs. She was a part of a group called YRI, which is the Youth Resiliency Institute, where they were art activists. They were out in the community. They were, she was learning Black history, Kwanzaa, all year round. Like, she was steeped in cultural activities, and so we didn't really miss that piece, and we really didn't need our curriculum to provide that piece because our life provided that piece. Now, if you're looking for, a curriculum that has all of that already in it, you're definitely going to have to look into some very specific Afrocentric curriculums, or whatever heritage cultural specific you really want to delve into. You're going to have to get really creative with finding those resources separately, most likely from the curriculum you find. Fast forward to 2020, I have my youngest child who is now in elementary school. I had pretty much known that he would be homeschooled early on, and so language was a huge part of that, and tech was a huge part of that. So one of the differences that you want to consider when you're homeschooling is the differences in your children's personalities. If you have multiple children, you really want to consider making sure that you have different styles of learning and different ways for them to interact with their curriculum so that you're honoring their particular learning style. So for my oldest daughter, she was very independent, self-regulated in terms of time management. She just was more of a responsible type of personality, where it was like, oh, I need to do this, okay, I'm doing this. Whereas skipping on down to my youngest, to my son, absolutely not. He needs to be engaged, it needs to be fun, preferably it needs to be some sort of gaming aspect, technology aspect, and then he's able to grasp the concepts super easy and grow from there. So let me rewind just a little bit, because there was a lesson I had to learn with my oldest daughter that really helped set the tone for how I am currently homeschooling my child. I tried to replicate school when we first started homeschooling. So I'm like, yeah, we're gonna wake up 8 o'clock in the morning, breakfast, school's gonna start at 9, and we're gonna do this thing all day to 3 p.m. I wanna say it took us a solid month and a half to drive each other crazy and say, yo, this is not working. So we sat down together and I just started asking, like, yo, what do you need? Because I'm frustrated and this really sucks for me as a parent. What's your experience? And she was like, yeah, I really don't like this thing, like rushing in the morning and all this. And so we realized, okay, neither one of us are really truly like an early bird morning person. And so we decided, okay, we're gonna have a school day that reflects that. So we're not actually gonna start school until 10. We'll wake up around 9, we'll ease into the day, drink our tea. How was your dream? You know, just kind of check in with each other before we jump into this schooling. And then I began doing research on how much time children really needed to spend learning. And so in that research, I found a couple of charts that really go over how much time your children really need to spend focused on educational activities, how much of the percentage of that actually needs to be done through play, and how much of that can be filled with extracurriculars. And so we came up with an amazing schedule over days. We had like 3 days that were more curriculum heavy. We had one day where it was music, where she went off and did piano lessons with her Azerbaijani piano teacher. And then she went to a local college, Morgan State University, for their STEM, their homeschool STEM program, where she was able to interact with other children, games, fun, but getting that math and science piece. And then she was able to travel. So that was her first opportunity to go overseas to Ghana, where she was there, I think, like a week and a half or 2 weeks. And so we really just tapped into the piece of like, this is our life. We can do what's best for us, our family, and our particular personalities. And if I could share anything, that would be my number one takeaway. Like, please create a homeschool environment that supports your family, like realistically, that it makes it enjoyable and that it honors the personalities of as many people involved as possible. If you have a child that really enjoys and thrives in structure, make sure that you have things organized and structured. If you have a child that might have some sensory issues and they really want to be wrapped up in a blanket, or they want to be in a bean bag or something like that, don't make a big deal about how they're actually absorbing the information. Just make sure that they're comfortable and that they're excited about learning the information. And so for some of us of a certain generation, you're like, okay, if you're not sitting up straight at the desk and focused on this piece of paper, are you really learning? But the fact of the matter is that research time and time again shows you that younger children especially, but all of us, we learn through play, we learn through immersion, and we learn when we are comfortable and we feel safe. And so making sure that your environment feels safe and that it's comfortable for your child and that it's organized in a way that you can navigate it as their teacher is going to be one of the top things that you want to keep in mind. So let's fast forward to homeschooling my son now. During the pandemic, obviously school was just non-existent. And so we tried to complete his kindergarten year virtually, but he was in an immersion program, a language immersion program, in a language that I don't speak. And so you can imagine how quickly that went downhill trying to be at home speaking Arabic, and I could not create an immersive language environment for him, and so we had to shift. So that first year, first grade, Honey, I was piecemealing everything from online. We were doing ABC Mouse. I was doing some online like art, immersive art museum kind of stuff for his art classes. I was just pulling pieces of curriculum from anywhere that I could pull it just to make it through. Now, he was fine. We also, where we were living at the time, in order to homeschool, you had to be registered with the county. And with the county, they assign you a representative, and twice a year you had to do a homeschool review. So I was pulling all kinds of curriculum and all kinds of stuff. And that drove me crazy personally as the mom, as a homeschooler, as a teacher, and researching all of this stuff, not having a teaching background. That was absolutely horrible. 10 out of 10, do not recommend. So it was super important, which my homeschool rep kind of walked me through. She said, well, depending on your belief system, depending on your background and the personality of your child, the learning style, here are some curriculums you might want to look at. That way you're not pulling from everything. She was like, I see what you've done here. He's definitely got a lot of information. She's like, but how are you living, right? He's fine, he's playing, he's enjoying life. But that really frazzled me as a mom, and it wasn't good. And so the next piece that I would say is make sure that you find a curriculum that reflects your family's values as much as possible. If you are a Christian and you're a believer, there are some curriculum that are particularly geared towards that belief system. If you're looking for some secular curriculum, there are some curriculums out there that you can find. They're a little bit more hard to find that can be done. There was also an interesting curriculum. We didn't wind up going with it, but they did their entire curriculum teaching through like storybooks and like fantasy, which was pretty interesting and something to consider. So if you have a child that likes to read and they absorb a lot of information through reading, having a reading based curriculum would be something that would be amazing for you. So what we wound up doing the following year was Me Academy. Now, Me Academy was cool for what it was for that particular year. It had measures built into the technology where they did all the quizzes and the tests themselves, and they kept a log of the grades. They kept a log of what subject matter your child was learning via the videos. The videos were pre-recorded with teachers teaching the lessons, and then it would take your child through like a practice test and then take them through a quiz test for mastery. Now, you could go into the background of Me Academy and you could set whatever grade you decide for your child as mastery. So if I said, my child has to get an 80% or better on these quizzes before they can go on to the next subject matter, I could do that on the parent side of Me Academy. And then anything that he was not mastering or that he wasn't passing, I would get a report of, so that he would have to go back in and redo those lessons. That was a really good transition for me personally, because of I didn't have to keep track of the quizzes. I didn't have to keep track of the test. I could see where his strengths were developing and where his weaknesses were. That was a good transition from ABC Mouse, especially for age. So ABC Mouse was really good, I think, through 6 years old. It may not have every single thing that you need, but it definitely has the core principles. It has games and it's fun and sing-songy. So I really think that ABC Mouse is amazing for getting your child reading and getting them to fall in love with learning. Me Academy was a great transition for us for first grade, but I wound up still supplementing with a lot of other curriculum, and so that leads me to this year. I wound up initially looking for a program that had a couple of days a week pop-in with teachers, and that wound up not working out, and I found another learning platform called Sparks Learning Pals. Now, I like this platform because you have an option of having access to unlimited pre-recorded classes, Or you can join their full program where your child can actually engage with the teachers ahead of time live. And these are going to be basically the same classes that are posted on the pre-recorded, except your child gets assigned a homeroom, which is their primary teacher. They have classmates that they're seeing on a regular basis, and it's far more interactive. And so I am really enjoying Sparks Learning Pals this year because he's able to interact with the children in this class consistently. He's able to check in with his different teachers. They have physical ed classes where they're doing all kinds of exercises. They take virtual field trips together where they're learning all kinds of stuff. And he's even learning like sign language. He's doing some logic and puzzle classes. Like, the variety of classes is amazing. And they provide printouts weekly for the classes. So this is a printer heavy program. Like, you're gonna need a printer to print out all of the PDFs that they provide. But I really like the combination of worksheet based learning and live interaction, as well as physical movement, doing, having that gym class available and him being able to be flexible in terms of his environment, making sure that he's comfortable. And so I mentioned a few here. I will link them in the comments, the different programs that I'm using. There's some that are pure curriculum based, like the Good and the Beautiful. Again, Calvert School is some. There are some other like cultural based homeschool curriculum. There's one called like Uhuru Academy out of Atlanta where they have like an in-person class, and then they have people that can join online. And so I just want to encourage you to think outside the box. I say this all the time about a lot of different things, but truly think outside the box. Think about what your family needs. Think about your child's personality and make your decisions based on that. And also, don't get caught up in trying to replicate the school model. Children learn quickly. And I want to say this, if you have youngsters and you're like, okay, well, I don't need to start, homeschool until they're like of age, I would encourage you not to do that. Children's brains grow the most between 0 and 5 years old. Exposing your children to nature, teaching them things, exposing them to different languages, or even playing their favorite cartoon in different languages is going to be one of your biggest assets in that age range. And it really sets the tone for their capacity in the future, right? So it's all going to be about exposure, 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 and creating as many pathways as possible in your child's brain so that they can reveal their genius and explore and show you the things that pique their interest all along the way. Now, I'm a big proponent of like studying the child that's in front of you. Every curriculum is not going to be helpful or useful for every child and their personality, but it's going to be up to you as their parent to pay attention to the child in front of you and try to accommodate their learning style. And it's amazing because you really just get to learn your child. And so even when it comes to their life and developing their character, you know your child if you take the time and study them. You pay attention to who they are, their quirks, their learning styles. It helps you learn how to communicate with them more effectively. These are all going to be things that are the foundation of your relationship building with your child, helping them be confident because they have someone that knows who they are and will help support them with their strengths and their weaknesses. So if you're out there and you're like, oh my gosh, I want to homeschool, but it all feels so daunting, I want to encourage you. You can do it your way for your family and in a creative way that fits your own needs. It doesn't have to be stressful. Being around your children a lot and being their teacher is going to be stressful enough. Don't let the homeschooling aspect add to that. And to that point, make sure that you are building in safeguards for you. For me, I've really had to pivot my technology time constraints. I used to be no more than 2 hours a week, blah, 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 blah. When the pandemic came, honey, that went right on up out the window because I was like, yo, we are together all the time. And I'm gonna go crazy if you don't have separate time over there and I don't have separate time over here. Like, I need my personal time as well. So be gracious with yourself and build in those safeguards where if you're building in like a quiet time during the day where you're reading, or a nap time, or outside in nature time where you're really just letting your child explore and it's not directed. That is so important as well. Like, I'm huge. Let your children get dirty. Let them go outside. Let them plant stuff. Let them dig in the mud. Wash the clothes. But the microbes in the dirt, the smiles on their faces, the sunlight hitting their head, like, it's so good for their immunity. It's so good for their connection with nature and their character development, for them to be outside as well. So all learning doesn't have to take place on a tablet, on a worksheet, or in your home or a school. It can take place anywhere. When you're shopping, make sure you're talking to them about pricing, percentages, math. When you are driving, you can talk to them about their carbon footprint. You can talk to them about whatever pops into their little head and just hear what their train of thought is talking about, and you would be surprised at what you discover just by listening to them express themselves. So I hope that this was helpful. If you have any super specific curriculum questions, feel free to ask me. But I just, again, am encouraging the folks that have reached out to me. You can do it. You're gonna have to do it your way. My way may not work for you, but it also might. But just think outside the box, study your child, and don't be afraid to tailor fit this homeschooling experience to you, your family, and your children. Turn up some music. Like I said, play cartoons in different languages. If you're gonna let them, use technology, make it educational. Make sure that you are exposing them to some of the different educational channels and stuff on YouTube. Make sure you put the parental guards in place, but have fun with it. Don't let this be another burden on your heart. Let this be the divine and beautiful opportunity that it is that you have to be able to teach your child. Because guess what? It's an honor. It's an honor. You are your child's first teacher no matter what. But it's an honor to be able to teach your children for however long you're able to teach them. And if it looks like having other teachers step in for a little bit, or maybe even a private tutor to help strengthen them in areas where they're not as strong, do it. You can do it. So I hope this was encouraging, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.